Raise some
Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change. Time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.
Welcome to the Raising Cain Show. I'm your host, Nate Cain. And today we dive into some of the most mysterious disasters in recent history with the remarkable Michelle Melendez. Michelle is a freedom activist, fitness expert, an award-winning author of The Great Maui Land Grab. She's been on the front lines questioning narratives about disasters like the Maui Fires, North Carolina's Hurricane Helene, and the Pacific Palisades Fires in Los Angeles. Today, Michelle will connect the dots between these events, exposing potential land grabs, government overreach, and the role of Agenda 2030 in reshaping America. Are these tragedies engineered, or are they coincidences? Stay tuned as we uncover the truth. Michelle, thank you for joining the show.
Mahalo so much for having me, and aloha everyone. I'm here on the Big Island, and I'm just so grateful that you're keeping the eyes on Maui, on what happened in Hurricane Helene, and now what's happening in LA. Mahalo.
You know, I'm looking at you, and clearly it's warm weather there. It's freezing cold here, so I've got my thick jacket on here down in my my bunker at my studio, but. I'm so glad to have you on. You know, we were talking before the show, and I apologize, folks, for being a little bit late today. There was a major Microsoft Windows update, and it was a security update, so I felt compelled to install it, and it took way longer than expected. But I wanted to make sure that I do have the latest security, especially as a cybersecurity expert. That's kind of important. There was I grew up in Southern California. And in fact, a lot of these areas that are, being affected, in particular, Pasadena is an area that I used to hang out in a lot. A lot of friends still live there. Pacific Palisades, I know folks up there. This is a tragedy that has just been. I don't even think the media. Obviously they're talking a lot about it, but there's always fires in LA, in California. There's always been fires, but this is different. And my stepmom and my father and my brother, they still live out there. And my stepmother had written something on her social media recently that in all of her years of living in Los Angeles, she's never seen anything like this. I mean, it really, truly is destruction on a scale of nothing we've seen. And, coincidentally, I think I was hearing the same thing from people that I know who live in Maui. My cousin owns a home there, and her home burned to the ground. And they said the same thing, that just this fire moved so fast. They've never seen anything like it. And, and then you have the situation in North Carolina, and I know people there as well. And the flooding was just unbelievable, like nothing anybody's ever seen. So, of course, the narrative that immediately that the mainstream media turns to is climate change. But we know, even from the supposed climate change experts, that the weather phenomenon is not related to climate change, even in their own words. So what is going on? What is happening? And so I want to start there. What parallels do you see between the Maui Fires, Pacific Palisades Fires, and the Hurricane Helene, and maybe even other disasters?
Yeah, mahalo for that. So I just want to let everybody know the Great Maui Land Grab book. It doesn't just talk about Maui. It talks about Hurricane Helene. It talks about who owns America, Chapter 10, what's going on with what's climate change, why are they talking about it, what's up with smart cities and carbon, and what we can do about it. And you can get it at greatmauilandgrabbook.com, and you get 10% off by putting truth in. And the reason why I'm sharing that is because the normies who don't believe that anything is happening, it helps to wake people up, because people they love Maui. We care about our ohana, our family in North Carolina, and what's happening now to the survivors there who are literally out in the cold, literally. And then what's happening in LA right now, it's not normal. And so why this is happening. So back in 2016, both Asheville and Maui were decided upon that they would be smart cities. And smart doesn't really have an official acronym, but people who see it and have researched it, we believe that it means surveillance, monitoring, analyze, reporting technology. And basically, what happened in Maui? So both. Let me just back up. Both Maui and North Carolina, Asheville were set to be smart cities. LA set to be a smart city. Not only that, but they also are set to hold the Olympics. And I find it really interesting. And I don't want to go too far off topic, but I just find it interesting that the Diddy thing is happening, and with the destruction of people's homes. If anything were linked to Diddy, it would actually be, the evidence would not be there anymore. So I just find that fascinating. I just thought about that the other day.
Mhm.
But the reason why this is happening is because you have to follow the money. Like they always say, follow the money. So who are the people that gain from smart cities? The renewable energy companies and the electric companies. So here, that's when you look at that. So the top three, and I can actually do a screen share and show my
Sure.
presentation that I did at the Red Pill Expo, and I did at for the Common Sense Show. So let me say, just put up who gains here, and share my screen. Presentation, share screen, and share screen. We'll go here and here. Okay, good. Can you see that?
Yeah, I'm going to add that to the stage here.
Okay.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, so when you look at who gains from this, who the renewable energy companies and the electric companies, the largest renewable energy company is Aberdorola SA, and the largest stockholders are Qatar Investment Authority and BlackRock. That's the largest one, number one
Hmm.
renewable energy company in the world. The second one is GE Vernova Inc., Vanguard and BlackRock, largest stockholders. And then the next one is Nextera Energy Inc., Vanguard and BlackRock. So when you're looking at this, and then you also look at the electric vehicles, the number 2 and 3. So Elon Musk is the number one who owns the Tesla electric vehicles, but number 2 and 3 are Vanguard and BlackRock. So BlackRock also owns most, if not all, of the electric companies in the nation. They own
Wow.
Hawaii Electric. They own North Carolina, and PG&E is mostly owned by BlackRock. BlackRock is the top number one stockholder in Pacific Gas and Electric. So when you're looking at that, and you're looking at who owns these electric, one thing I wanted to share about Qatar is actually not just an investment company, but it also is a country, and it's sitting right next to Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia right now has what's called the Line. And the Line is this new smart city, 15-minute city with no roads, cars, or emissions. It'll run 100% renewable energy. 95% of land will be preserved for nature, you guys, not people, nature. And I want to tell you, you have to look at your general plan. It
Hmm.
doesn't matter if your city's being attacked right now, your general plan will be how they bring in smart cities into your area. Big Island, I'll show you Big Island in a moment, in our general plan a little bit later. Um, People's health and well-being will be prioritized over transportation and infrastructure. That means more rules, more regulations on keeping you safe. We all know what that means. The line will eventually accommodate 9 million people and will be built on 21 square foot. And look at all that land that's not used for people. It's for nature. This is again Qatar. This is in Saudi Arabia right now. Right now, this is
Do,
being
do
built.
me a favor, and the screen that I'm seeing, it's not changing the slides. There we go. Yeah, and I think
Okay,
because
I'll
I
just
think
keep
these will
it
show
here.
it. Now, I want to comment on something real quick here in regards to BlackRock. So, BlackRock, they would have you believe that they are not um, a monopoly, right? That they're no threat because they're not they don't own the majority of a lot of companies. They own pieces. They may have the largest share, but oftentimes it's like maybe 10, 30% or whatever. It's not 51%. And they do this on purpose, I
Mhm.
believe, because they figured out a long time ago that we have something called antitrust laws. And so, if we see a monopoly or we see monopolistic behavior, our government has the ability to be able to shut down these companies or break them up, as we did with the Bell companies, back in the day, AT&T. And but if you notice, you haven't really seen a whole lot of antitrust lawsuits or a lot of antitrust rulings, not since the last major one that we saw that was going on was Bill Gates, who was, what Microsoft was being sued by the federal government, or they were, the federal government was going after him, investigating for antitrust, and then all of a sudden, all that went away, and we haven't really seen anything since then. And one of the things that I think occurred is the big corporations learned, especially companies like BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, which they basically are the ones providing the investment money,
Mhm. Mhm.
for a lot of these companies. And the problem is that if you are a corporation and you want to expand your corporation, you almost have to take money from BlackRock, Vanguard, or State Street if it's a significant amount of money that you need, because they basically are the power brokers,
That's
in
right.
corporate investment. And so in a way, what you have between those three companies and probably a handful of others is, while they may not be a monopoly, they certainly act like a cartel. And I
That's right.
think this is the danger with these corporations, and not just them, but also it's the fact that they have ownership in so many companies. They have ownership. Maybe they don't own all of one company, but they own so many companies. They basically own all their competitors as well.
That's
That
correct.
they have a lot of power to be able to manipulate things and really cause major losses in one of those companies. And nobody and because they're shareholders in everything,
Mhm.
if one of the companies that they are shareholders in loses, another one that they're shareholders in is likely to gain. And so it
You're
doesn't
correct.
matter. This is what they did, this is why they were able to basically go after Tucker Carlson and Fox News and get him, basically booted off of there,
Mhm.
because they had ownership in the company that sued Fox News and in Fox News. So even though they lost money in one respect, they gained money in another. And so
That's right.
it is monopolistic behavior. It's just done in a very crafty way. And our Congress needs to address this. And I think it is something that is very dangerous.
Well, I totally 100% agree with you. So when we're talking about they, because I want to go a little bit step further in showing who actually owns America and what's actually going on here,
Sure.
because we love to talk about BlackRock and Vanguard, but who's behind that?
Mm.
And can you see this right
Yeah, let
here,
me
Nate?
bring that back up again here.
Okay, good.
All right. Yep.
Excuse me. So who owns America? Who owns most of the investment companies are the foreign bankers. These foreign bankers,
Hmm.
Rothschild he is known as the Treasury of the Vatican, and he was the first banker ever back in the 1500s for, I can't remember the king it was, but he was the number one first banker. And he so what's going on right now is that the foreign bankers, they own the military industrial complex, they own the IRS, which is not part of the government. The IRS is, the main headquarters is in Puerto Rico. The military industrial complex gets contracts from these. So we send billions of dollars to Ukraine, and everybody's getting upset. Oh, we're sending billions of dollars to Ukraine and Africa for humanitarian needs. You guys, we're not, because what that is that money is being laundered through the military industrial
Hmm.
complex and through BlackRock, through through contracts. That's the
Well,
whole scheme.
and they
For
know that after the war is over, then instead of making money off of death, then they will they will basically become the dealers of the rebuilding.
That's right.
This is what happened in Iraq. If you remember, after Iraq War, Halliburton got all these contracts and to build, basically rebuild infrastructure,
That's
and
right.
of course, because it was this big humanitarian effort, they were able to get the UN to put money into this from all over the world, and of course they made a lot of contracts. We didn't get any oil contracts out of that at all. A lot of people say that Iraq was about oil. It really wasn't. It
No,
was it
no,
was
not at all.
actually what it was about, though. Interestingly enough, was about the petrodollar and about the
Hmm.
fact that you had them trying to take out U.S. currency,
Hmm.
and forming another little deal there to sell oil without using the U.S. dollar. We're
Yep.
facing similar situations right now, and in fact, Saudi Arabia just for the first time ever since Nixon, took us off the gold standard and made a deal with Saudi Arabia to only sell oil, with U.S. currency. They have now not honored the longstanding deal, and you've
Hmm.
got Russia and Brazil and all of the BRIC nations basically,
Hmm.
coming together, and they can now buy oil without using the U.S. dollar, which of course could be very destructive to our economy. So we're dealing with very, massive geopolitical, consequences to a lot of these actions, and right at the heart and at the center of it, the people who are going to make money no matter who wins and who loses
That's right.
are these bankers. I mean, that's the
They have
heart of
been
what.
funding. Yeah.
Mhm.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's the heart of what kind of George Soros is about, right?
That's right.
He goes in, he creates chaos, and then he bets against the currency of that country that he's creating chaos in,
I
and he makes a
know.
ton of money. These
They
people
they
are
they
they're
fund both
amoral.
sides of the war. They fund.
That's right.
They've always funded both sides of the war. And
Yeah.
what people need to understand is that this country, they funded both the North and the South side of the Civil War, and they
Yeah.
took over the United States afterwards because we were broke, and the United States was then collateralized and created and became the United States Corporation, and all of government is now corporatized. There, and
Mhm.
so it's not a government. So we have to realize that our government has basically been taken over by these foreign bankers that now run everything. We don't live in the United States of America. We live in the United States corporation. And what you were saying about contracts, BlackRock got the contract to rebuild Ukraine. So
Mm.
those billions of dollars that everybody has got going, they're going to be, they're good. No, that money's going back into the BlackRock's pocket, which is going back into the to the foreign bankers' pockets. And the other thing is that there was a bill, I believe it's 823, that was in North Carolina, that was like a hurricane relief bill, and I believe it's $23 million, or possibly maybe even $1 billion. I have to relook at the number, but I think it's 23 in there, and most of that money is going to government infrastructures. It's not going to the people. It's
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, let's give hurricane relief. The same thing is happening, or was happening, in Maui with a bill 8231, which I think was really interesting because those numbers are really close together. But what is interesting is this bill was going to take over. Okay, Lahaina is this little dot on Maui,
Mhm.
but this bill was going to take over the entire west coast of Maui. To rebuild Lahaina, they were going to take over the entire west coast of Maui, take it out of the Maui governance, and give it to a 9-person governing board, completely take it out of the
Mhm.
governing of Maui County. and it actually got stopped, thank God, because they had in there that they were going to get funding from federal, private, non-private, non-profit agencies in any way they can, as most expeditiously as possible, was
Hmm.
literally written in the bill. What does that mean? That means blackmail. That means, backdoor deals. That means all kinds of stuff going through. So, and I do want to let people know, Lahaina's still locked down. Lahaina is still locked down to this day. Right now, you can't get into Lahaina unless you live there and you have a placard that says you own a property there. And then the guards tell you don't take pictures, no pictures, and no video, even though
Yeah,
we
why,
beat them out
why
all the time.
is that? I mean, what possible excuse? I mean, I can understand like immediately after the disaster, you've got people, they want to keep people out while they're trying to put out fires and all of that, or trying to assess damage. I get that. They want to prevent
Mhm.
looting, whatever. But I mean, how long has it been now?
It's
Why
been
in the
over
world?
15 months or 15, yeah, 15,
Yeah.
16 months,
How
something
can
like
they
that.
possibly justify,
Mhm.
having any
Yeah.
control over that area at this point? It's ridiculous. And so,
They're saying, the guards are saying, for the guards are saying that it's because of asbestos. Here's the thing, what you guys have to understand, that 2,200 homes and buildings burned in like 17 minutes. It was so fast. And
Mhm.
that's what the governor said, 17 minutes. It was longer than that, but he said that the fire went through Lahaina town in 17 minutes. So they gave one building permit after a year. Then 13, 14 months later, they've given 20 building permits out of 2,200 homes. Then on the lots, they have put down some red clay and they
Mm.
have put down gravel on top. And this one person just sent me the specs of how deep it is. And he literally says that the homeowners have to remove the gravel in order to rebuild at their own expense, and they're not being told where to put the gravel. So you look at Lahaina right now, and it's a ghost town. There's nothing being built right now at this moment. Nothing's being built.
Wow. Wow. You one of the things that I want to ask you about, because obviously there's the financial aspect of this, and there's clearly you can see patterns, and they do a good job of, like I said, of hiding, any potential nefariousness, because what they try to do is they say, well, we have ownership in every company. We're basically a piece of every company in America. So of course you're going to say BlackRock is behind this, or Vanguard, or State Street is behind it, because they own a little bit of every company. But I do think that that's intentional, so that they can
Nate, I'm
basically
sorry.
redirect. That's all right.
You have to
So
excuse me.
that they can redirect. Oh boy, I hope she's all right. So one thing, folks, that I think is kind of interesting is there
Mhm.
are
Sorry.
things that have gone on, though, that go beyond just the money. There are patterns in how these disasters unfolded or how they were handled. And I think you've identified some of those. Can you talk a little bit about that?
With with what's happening in the government.
Well, I'm talking about with these natural disasters, Maui Fires, the Pacific Palisades Fires. Also, by the way, another interesting fire that happened that a lot of people have probably forgotten about was the Paradise Fire. And I've seen similarities in all three of these. And, in the fact that you've got like areas where there's no trees burned, but you've got
That's right. Let me
cars
show
that,
you.
like, aluminum that is like melted, and the temperatures that you got to get to cause that kind of
Excuse me,
damage.
everybody. Sorry about
Let me
that.
bring that up real quick here.
Sometimes I get a tickle. Can you see this now?
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay. So, all right, where is it go? Paradise Fire. My mother lives 30 minutes from here. And I actually went up there during Christmas. Excuse me. The neighborhood was gone, but there was like,
Mhm.
there'd be one house completely intact, nothing wrong with it. Tubbs Fire, 2017, all ash, all white ash. And the trees are still there. The leaves are just really dried, but they're not gone. They're not burned up. Somebody sent me this LA fire. Oh, the trees are still there. White ash means very hot, very, very hot. Black, it should be black soot. Is what it should be. It should be black and not white ash. Then Maui fire is there on the right, and you can still see the palm fronds and the trees. After
Mhm.
after Maui, there was here's another one with all the palm fronds in the back, but the engine block is burned. The aluminum, the tires are melted, or rims, and all of this is just, it's not normal. And I even asked an arborist. I said, "How does a trees not burn in a fire?" And he said, "Excuse me, my apologies, you guys." He said, "The chemistry of the fire doesn't recognize the organic material."
Mhm. Interesting. Now, do you know one of the other things too that there's a lot of people have been talking about is about blue objects not burning. I've heard a little bit about that, but I don't know a whole lot about it. What can you tell us about that?
Yep. So this blue ticket in the upper left side, excuse me, was literally pulled out of the white ash. Like literally he just picked it up, and the white ash was falling off of the paper. And it's fine. The only thing that's singed is where the whale body is, which is brown. These blue t-shirts, no holes, no burn marks, nothing. He sold them.
Mhm.
He raffled them off. The blue umbrellas, completely fine, not one hole. And you can even see there's a charred wooden stick that's next to it, still nothing. The one on the right, lower right, that one's in my book, and it's from a Lahaina resident who sent that to me. And she basically went back to her property the day after, and everything was charred on the stove. That glass is melted out. You can see the glass is melted out.
Mhm.
The rims are the racks are warped, but there's a beautiful blue color. So how is this possible? This is a microwave transmission using laser generated plasma beam, and this has a titanium sapphire infrared laser. And what that means is that the sapphire is a blue color, blue wavelength, blue frequency. And anything that is blue has the same wavelength as the sapphire. So it's not going to absorb the laser, it'll reflect it and not burn. Now, somebody just sent me this. Here it is. This is from LA. Blue trash can, plastic blue trash can that's not
I'm not
burned.
seeing the change on the screen. Can
Oh,
you check?
okay. Let me just stop here and just press the share screen again and then bring it up.
Okay.
Can you see that?
There we go. I'm bringing it up again.
Yep.
There we go. Yep. Wow.
So yeah,
Look at
this
that.
was in LA. Yeah. So it's this was also a friend who's a fire captain. He showed the same picture. It's in the book with another blue trash can. So plastic survived the fire, but yet the home's completely destroyed. There's one home that is that has a red roof that's in the book, completely fine, no singe marks, nothing. And we think it's because it was all wood. There's no metal around it. The fire in Maui, it actually, I'll take this off. It actually jumped over a construction site that was completely open with exposed 2x4s and exposed wooden horse, and it melted the cars in the next parking lot and kept the trees. The trees were still there. There's leaves on the trees. The cars were melted. A lot of them were melted rims. No glass in the cars. The glass was melted out. A regular forest fire is about 12 to 1400 degrees. To melt glass, I've been told, is about 24 to 2500 degrees to actually melt
Mhm.
glass. But you see all these
Wow.
cars, none of them have glass. It's all completely gone. So that's none of that is normal. I'll show you guys the warning, the bodies. There's a couple of charred, or I don't know if the word is charred or if it's carbonized or what it is. But this body on the left, can you see that? Is
Yeah.
that coming up? Okay, good. She was found up a little bit higher above Lahaina, above Front Street, and you can see her corn rolls. How is it possible to see somebody's hair design in a regular fire? But look
Yeah.
at her
That's like a
feet.
flash burning that happens so fast. It's like, like kind of almost reminds me of the pyroclastic, Pompeii, that
Yes,
that area, right? When people were suddenly killed by like massive heat so
yep,
quickly and buried in ash, and
that's
it
right.
it
That's right.
just
And look at the
captured them in
body above
time.
her. Above her, the feet.
Hmm.
Something was up with the ground being super hot or something because there it disintegrated her feet. It disintegrated his legs, but you can
Hmm.
still see the body on her. This is the toad my friend found in the burn zone. I held this
Wow.
toad completely hollow on the inside, but you could hold it, and it was in a jumping, leaping. It was leaping and
Yeah.
it was just petrified. We sent it to a frontline doctor who said he would check it for microwave frequency, microwave energy. He never got back to us. He never contacted us again. He wouldn't return emails or phone calls,
Hmm.
nothing. And then the dog, you see his ears and his fur and his paw pads, and he looks like he's running. He's looked like he's running. And my fire captain friend, he said that animals will hide. They'll go under something like a car and they'll cover themselves to protect themselves. They won't be out in the middle of the street running. And this poor dog you can see his nose. How does a nose and fur not burn?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
this one is disturbing. I just want to warn you guys. This one breaks my heart. This person on the left-hand side, you see a body. You see a human body. But on the right-hand side, it's charred. And look at this right hand. How is it just floating off of the ground? How does it just float like that? If it's
Yeah.
burnt, it'll be ash. It's not going to be floating off the ground. Um, a friend of mine who works for national security, she said that this is secondhand knowledge, but she said that one of her friends was asked to pick up the bodies and recover, and he was on boats. There was a couple boat captains, and he said that he was picking up bodies that were in a swimming like they were frozen in a swimming position or petrified, however you want to call it. I don't even know the name, but he was picking them up in a swimming position in the water.
Hmm.
So something happened. And that brings me to the number of deaths. Same thing with North Carolina. They're saying 200 people died. No, that is impossible in North Carolina. And also with Maui, they say the
Yeah.
official
200
count
people
was
that they
102.
found.
Yeah, yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And then
Now,
Maui go.
oh,
I
sorry.
was
Go
going to say
ahead.
about I was going to say about the children,
Sure.
because in Maui, 3,001 children were enrolled in the Lahaina Luna School District, and then after two and a half weeks afterwards, there were five. It was like 548 re-enrolled in a different school district, and a little over 400 were enrolled back in the Lahaina Luna School District. That left 2,200 and 2,025 children that didn't re-enroll anywhere. So where are they? What happened with them? In the one of the first interviews that the governor had, he said that they expect to find a lot of children that are victims of the fire, but they only found 3. That's impossible. That's impossible. And then people say, "Well, Michelle, why aren't the parents screaming at the rooftops for their keiki, their children?"
Hmm.
And I said, "Because a lot of them, or I can't say a lot of them, but a friend of mine who lives there said there have been suicides that the media is not talking about, and parents are actually two mother and father both committed suicide because their children died. So we don't really know the number of deaths. I know that I went to the memorial and counted 145 crosses, and they say 100. It's just 102 deaths and zero missing, even though people were in the water. That's just impossible.
Yeah. I want to share, whenever people talk about these subjects, and there's a lot of things going on here, folks, but I want to show you this because I think it lends credibility to the idea of something called directed energy weapons and their possible use in these types of things. We're not making this stuff up. We're not, this isn't conspiracy theory. Let's just put it that way. All right. We're not talking about tinfoil hat stuff. We're talking about actual technology. Military Times is a publication that puts out a lot of different stuff, obviously related to the military. And they had a short little video here I want to show. This was from 3 years ago. And I want to play this real quick for folks so they can just kind of get an idea of what the military was talking about doing 3 years ago. And guarantee you, if they're talking about it publicly, that means they already have it. They're not going to talk about what they want to do and tip off our enemies. And here's another point I want to bring up real quick. And that is that if we're doing it, guarantee you, we've got enemies that are doing it too. So while the tendency is to automatically, see and think that, this is, our own government that maybe did this, it could very well be foreign governments as well. Adversarial governments that have done this and tested out their weapons on our system or on our country. And it would not surprise me. I mean, the current administration allowed for the Chinese to fly a spy balloon over our country. The current administration has allowed drones, and I have I've got it on good sources that at least some of the drones that are being reported are foreign adversarial drones. They've allowed these things to fly over our airspace and not taken them out. So it would not surprise me if there was, if some of this was weaponization, by our adversaries and possibly even by our own government. Because look, we've seen, there's been history in the past of where we've seen, experimentation done on American citizens. So, I want to just show this video though real quick here. Hold on, I got to get past this commercial here.
Big ideas.
All the services are interested in them. They've been interested in them for decades, going back before the technology was even available. In most recent years, we've seen a lot of direct energy or laser projects geared at counter drone options. The Army was equipping 5 kilowatt, 10 kilowatt, and larger and higher, more powerful lasers on Stryker combat vehicles for testing in Europe and, of course, here in the continental United States. The Air Force did a 2018 counter-drone laser rodeo in White Sands missile range, where they tried a whole bunch of different options from vehicle to stationary mounted lasers to take out drones. That's pretty well known. But there's some new projects coming up that are quite interesting for the Navy and the Air Force that are pretty big. First one up is Thor, not the mythical Norse god of thunder, nor the Marvel Avenger character, but actually the tactical, high-powered operational responder. It's a prototype piece of equipment from the Air Force Research Laboratory that is essentially geared toward hitting multiple targets, sometimes simultaneously. That item is a laser, essentially, that would hit all kinds of drones, different ranges, different powers, different altitudes. Obviously a prototype, so it's going to take a little while to get it off the ground, but it could help solve that big drone swarm problem that a lot of strategists seem to be concerned with.
Now, in this video here, they're talking about ground, to air lasers.
I'm going to read the acronym itself.
But they're also
solar-powered
here we go.
Experimental Development and Research Project, or SPIDER. They have a sub-project I'm not even going to try to spell out called Arachne. You get the theme. But essentially, what it does is it takes solar power, 2 satellites that are going to collect that energy, and then beam that energy through RF frequency to a forward operating base that will then collect it, transfer it back into power. So instead of having generators, convoys, and all the fuel that you would need for that, you're literally getting your energy from the sun through a satellite. The next one is from the Navy. It is the Directed Energy Systems Integration Lab. Now, the lab broke ground earlier this year and is scheduled to open in December. It's essentially a lab built entirely around figuring out how to put lasers on ships, whether that's to hit drones, use weapons against other ships, maybe lasers for communications. There's all kinds of options. And this lab is actually going to have about a 36,000 square mile range for testing, and it's going to be testing all these different ideas, all these different concepts for the Navy. So Air Force is looking at space, Air Force is looking at counter drone, the other services are doing the same, mounting stuff on vehicles. So the technology is finally catching up with the science fiction.
So the
Yeah.
reason I bring that up is just to show that we've been dealing with researching this stuff. This is not science fiction anymore.
No, I'd
They've
love to
got
share you something.
sure.
I think you'll appreciate.
Yeah, we've
Share.
got laser technology. We've had ground-based laser technology for a long time. Our enemies certainly have as well. And now, they've been working on these space-based lasers and space-based energy-directed weapons. And you've got, I can't remember who it was, but it was one of the Pentagon officials a couple years back saying the word directed energy weapon. And he was talking about, investments in those sorts of things and concerns about even our enemies having those sorts of things. And this was like during a Pentagon briefing. I was trying to find it earlier and I couldn't find it, but it's fascinating to me that the mainstream media hasn't picked up on this and they're not talking about it. It's like they just want to assume that everything is just a natural forest fire when you have
climate change. They want to it's climate change.
You're right. You're right.
That's why I started my research on Maui, because when the governor went to the UN and said it's climate change for the fire, I just was livid, and I started interviewing arborists and firefighters and everybody. And but this is a bill happened in 2016, and it is to acquire the direct energy weapons systems program. And basically it says the Committee of Armed Services of the Senate, in the report, they say that since the 1960s, the Department of Defense has invested more than $6 billion. That means they've been working on direct energy weapons before the 60s, because they spent, since the 60s, they've spent $6 billion on the direct energy weapon science, and they were afraid that they couldn't bring the whole program to fruition. So guess what, taxpayers, your tax dollars paid for the direct energy initiative program to come to fruition. And this is then I wanted to share one more thing on here, because I'll show you who owns the patents for the direct energy weapons.
Well, Michelle,
And
hold that thought
go
real
ahead.
quick, because I'm actually a little bit past the time I normally run my first commercial. This topic is so interesting that the time's gotten away from me. So I need to run a quick commercial, but we will be right back. And as soon as we get back, we're going to get into that. So folks, hang with us for a minute here, and we'll be right back after a quick message.
It says, I woke up this morning and looked out the door to a country I don't recognize. They put masks on our face to hide our pain, and there's no fire in most people's eyes. And it's still true today. It's still true today that they've tried to destroy the American spirit. And in some instances, they've done a dadgum good job. But in other instances, they have lit an inferno in some people. And we right now are gathering some of those people that are on freaking fire to save this country.
Welcome back to the Raising Cain Show. I'm here with my guest, Michelle Melendez, and we've been talking about directed energy weapons. We've been talking about government involvement. We've been talking about the people that are behind the scenes in the financial operations who gain who stand to gain the most by some of these just outrageous natural disasters. And it's been just an incredible conversation. Before we continue, I just want to remind people the documentary "Finish This Fight: Diary of a Pissed Off American Soldier." That is just it's a documentary that a friend of mine, Glenn Baker, who's a country singer, he put on this documentary, funded it and everything, and put it out there. And I'm also in this documentary talking about my story as an FBI whistleblower, and you guys get to hear about that. But it's not just me. It's not just Glenn. Glenn talks about how he was incarcerated for, over 70 days, not given access to a lawyer, things that just happened to him that were just completely unconstitutional, eventually exonerated. But there's also, we had some great, folks that were in this documentary, Alan West and Ivan Rakelin and others. Craig the Sawman Sawyer talking about human trafficking and what his efforts are to stop that. It's a great documentary, folks, and it's one that doesn't just get you angry and leave you hanging. It has a positive message in it. And one of the best things about it is when you go to finishthisfight.us/Cain, you not only help the show, we get a tiny little bit of money that comes from that will come to our show. It's like $4, so it's not a huge amount, but half of the proceeds for this show are going to go to help put a soldier who is no longer able to walk. It will put him in a exoskeleton so that he can walk again. And I can't think of a greater cause than to do something like that. And so folks, go and check it out. Again, it's finishthisfight.us/Cain. If you forget, if you notice at the bottom of the screen, there's a scrolling ticker at the bottom and it has that. And you can look at that and check that out. Michelle, before we went to break, we were getting ready to get into a topic, and I want to turn it back over to you and let you go ahead and talk about that.
Yeah, so the direct energy weapons, who basically owns them? Just check this out. There's so many patents. There's over 429 patents. Raytheon 120 owns 124 direct energy weapon patents. Applied Materials Inc. 120. The MBDA of a European multinational corp 64. The Alphabet Inc. is interesting because I believe they're associated with Google.
They're the parent company.
That's right. 62 direct energy. Why did they have direct energy weapon patents and the
Very
Boeing
good
company
question.
59? It's really interesting. So this stuff is real. They've had direct energy weapon technology, I believe, since World War II, and then also we were talking a little bit about the weather modification, and I just want to kind of show
Yes.
you guys. Here's a hurricane and tornado control device, a control device that was issued. This patent was issued in 2003, and it literally uses sound waves to move air mass. And this is what Dane Wigington, if you want to watch a video about this, he on geoengineeringwatch.org, he literally shows you from the NEXRAD satellite images that the blue spheres are literally moving the hurricane over to North Carolina, and there it's unbelievable what that does, and or that this technology is available. The other thing I want to share about a natural weirdness is that the day before the Maui fire, there was a haze over the entire Maui island, the entire island. There was even a person that says, "What is this white haze?" And then the fire happened. So there's a U.S. patent for a combustible composition for generating aerosols, particularly suitable for cloud modification and weather control and aerosolization process. I don't know if this is what they used. This was issued in 1971, everyone. 1971, because I said earlier that we have over 200 weather modification patents, and the first one was in 1891. So weather modification is absolutely real. Direct energy weapons is absolutely real. They've been doing this for a very, very long time, and they have an agenda. And it's very interesting that the LA fires is happening right now, right before the inauguration of the next president. And always there's always look over here, look over here. So I wonder what Biden is putting through right now that isn't being put on the mainstream media, because everybody's looking at the LA fire. And that's why I said what I said earlier about the Diddy thing, and could be a total conspiracy thing, and I just was thinking about it because I'm like, why are they doing this? There's always a reason. 9/11 happened because Rumsfeld, he said there was $23 trillion missing from the U.S. Treasury, and then also the next day 9/11 happens, and the Pentagon gets attacked at the exact location of the records that had the $23 trillion that was missing, and it was audited. my friend who works for national security was actually at the Pentagon that day, and she said when she drove around the first time, she said she didn't see a plane, she saw a hole, and then the next day she went to go around and check it out again, and there were police officers, and they wouldn't let her pass. So it was it's very interesting what's been going on in our country for very long.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that that I want to bring up because I'm curious of your thoughts on this. So I, I've worked for the military most of my life. I don't now, but for I would say the majority of my career, I was a cybersecurity engineer and working for the Army, and then as a soldier, and then I worked for DISA. Then I worked for the Navy, and then I worked for the Marine Corps. And one of the things that I came to understand being kind of on the inside of a lot of these technology projects and things like that was the real threat that our enemies are actually working on and developing these technologies. And the fear that a lot of people, and I think rightfully placed, the fear that a lot of people have, in the Pentagon, and in the military, because we have to ask the question: why would these guys develop these types of, weaponry? Why would they develop this kind of technology that is so dangerous? Why did we develop nuclear weapons? And I think the reality is, and we know now that the Germans, the Nazis, were in a race, to develop nuclear weapons as well. I think oftentimes what we're looking at is an arms race, a technology race. We're trying to keep up, and keep ahead, of our enemies. The problem becomes how many of our enemies are developing these weapons being financed by the same people who are financing the development of those weapons here in our country.
That's a really
Again,
good question.
so I'm curious if you've done any research into not just who owns patents here, but who's funding some of these projects in other countries. We know that weather modification, for example, is something that was admitted to, like, for the longest time. Remember, I think it was like Alex Jones, was talking about chemtrails, right? And everybody made fun of him, and they said, "Oh, he's a conspiracy theorist. He's got a tinfoil hat wearing guy." But turns out he was right. They were working on, and they call it weather modification, geoengineering, whatever you want to call it. It's basically, it is not what they were telling us it was, which was condensation trails, following planes flying in high altitude, which if you ever watched one, it disappears shortly thereafter. It leaves the plane. It doesn't leave a trail of
That's right.
smoke across the entire sky, and they don't do grid patterns. But we know that they've been doing this stuff for a long time to mess with the weather. And where it really, the first time I ever saw it, because I knew about it a long time before I could ever say anything about it publicly. And the first time I saw it publicly come out was when it came out that China had been doing weather geomodification experiments, and we had concerns about it, and we had to, and I think it was because they were having to justify why we needed to spend money on that kind of research. So,
Yeah.
what do you know about foreign or adversarial development of these types of weapons, and what are your thoughts about how do we not develop these things when our enemies are developing? And is there a way that we can develop it maybe with greater transparency, or maybe, there's got to be some sort of solution.
Yeah.
We've go ahead.
Well, basically, yeah. I haven't looked into the exact patents, but what I do know around other countries, but what I do know is that these foreign bankers have infiltrated everywhere. There's nothing where they are not. The United Nations, it's interesting that I believe that there's 4 nations that have if one of those nations says no, that in a vote for in the United Nations, then it doesn't go through. And I know it's China, Russia, the United States, and I believe that the 4th one is France, but I may be mistaken on that one. But this is, you guys, that's what I've said before. This is a United States corporation owned by the foreign bankers who own everything everywhere. They own everything everywhere. They financed both sides of the war. They financed Hitler. They financed the U.S. when we won World War II. This was when Ford was sending tanks over to Germany that Americans were making, which is disgusting and just so it breaks my heart. But so we have to understand, and I also would like to say, I don't think this world is anything what we've been told. We have not been told about the frequency of our energy, what that means, the actual thing that this empty space is not empty. I follow Nassim Haramein, who is a physicist who discovered how particles, how everything is connected. It was something that Einstein was working on, and he actually discovered it, and it's called the Planck scale, which is in every single proton, which is in every single atom, which is in every single cell of your body. But this Planck scale is in the empty space that we walk through, which means we walk through frequency. Where it's like fish who swim through water. They don't know they're swimming through water. We walk through a frequency field. This is why they want to keep people afraid. This is why the media is constantly pushing fear, because the fear frequency is really, really low. But if people really understood the power that we have together, when we get into gratitude and love, that frequency is so high. I've manifested crazy stuff in my life getting into gratitude. This is how
Mhm.
I don't want to get religious too much on you, but Jesus, he knew this field. He actually could vibrate at the frequency of infinite possibilities. And that's how he did the miracles he did. And that's what Nassim Haramein talks about when he talks about the Planck scale, again, which is in every single proton in your body. And what the Planck scale is actually a holographic mass of the information of the entire universe in every proton of your body. And this is really hard for us humans to grasp, because we think this is my body, it's not very big. But this is deep. Basically what he's saying is that every person is a light frequency being. And if we really understood the power we have, these evil, and I believe they are satanic cult, would have no power over us. And we could literally stop direct energy weapons in their tracks if we really got who and what we are. And but I do believe that these satanic people, I think they have been in power for thousands of years, researching the Bible. When I go back to researching all of the lineage of the Canaanites, to the Babylonians, to the Egyptians, to the Roman Empire, to the Khazarian Mafia, down to the Jesuits that were created by the Roman Catholic Church because of the Reformation, the Christian Reformation. The Jesuits actually are the ones that pretty much have infiltrated everything. And who is in charge? Who's the treasury
Mhm.
of the Vatican? The Rothschilds. So we don't know this
Yeah,
world
the
we live
Pope
in, you
right now,
guys.
I think he's a part of the Jesuit order. So
That's right. The Roman Catholic Church created it. It's all by design. They all want to think, they want us to be afraid. They want us to be in fear. And when you have your house burning down and you're like, how is this happening? Of course we're going to be afraid. So we take that fear, but then I always say, and in my book, greatmauilandgrabbook.com, there's a prayer at the end of every single chapter, because I really believe this is a spiritual war. And we need to create a stronger relationship with whatever you call God. It doesn't matter. I personally call it an infinite intelligence, because this empty space is intelligent. There's a frequency here that's always connected to you. It's always, you cannot not be connected to it. When you walk in a room and you can feel people. Some people, when they walk in, who've got big personalities, you feel that frequency. We're not taught this in school, and that's by design, because they don't want us to really understand the actual power of living in a human body. And so this whole
you
thing's a
know
game. This whole thing's a game, you guys.
what's interesting about what you were just talking about. We're not taught about it. It amazes me how much we do teach stuff that is just theory as fact, right? They teach that the Earth is has a magma, has a crust, magma, and then a solid core. We don't know.
That's
Nobody's
right.
actually ever drilled through the crust. They tried and failed, and so we don't know. They have the best theory of it, and that's
Mhm.
about it. Same thing, with evolution, of course. A theory that has been, just debunked, in my opinion, because one of the
Correct.
things that debunked it was DNA. The fact that no changes in basically every change that has caused all the differences between us,
Mhm.
are due to the breaking of genes, not the creation of any new genes. So, in other words, we're not evolving, we're devolving, from what was once a perfect DNA. And
Mhm.
it just it blows my mind though that things are taught as fact that are theories, and yet they don't explore any other theories at all. They don't
It's by
explore
design.
it. Yep, yep. They don't explore spirituality. If anything, they've alienated spirituality, out of our lives, and out of our children's
That's
lives.
They don't want us to understand the I live on a farm, and the trees and the plants grow, and there's birds and everything. Like, nature doesn't realize the drama that humans are going through. And I kind of, when I do my exercise, I kind of laugh about that, because the nature is still doing the nature's thing. And there's a frequency here that when you get into nature and you put your feet on the ground, you feel different. And what is that? What
Hmm.
is that frequency of love? What is that? When then there's a frequency of fear. What is depression? Depression's the lowest frequency. That's why people want to sleep all the time. There's no energy in depression. You get angry, now you're going to be moving, because you have more energy. And that's, but people, I totally 100% agree with you. It's all by design to keep us from really understanding the power that we really have. And you
Hmm.
guys, we really do have way more power than they do.
You hit on something else too. I think is also important to I want to echo what you just said earlier about that they want us in fear. Fear, when you talk about the spiritual, and the fact is that, and I really believe this has been my experience, my personal experience. The demonic feeds off of fear. Fear is
That's
like
right.
food for it. It cannot harm you. It can't do anything to you unless you are afraid of it. And the more fear you have, the more control it has over your mind, the more control it has to manifest physical realities in your life. All of those negative emotions, negative energy, it really does have an impact. And I think that, science even bears that out. We've seen that, they've done experiments, that's what the whole idea behind the placebo effect is
Mhm.
that people who believe that they're taking something that's going to help them, that it oftentimes has just as much an impact as some of these drugs, that we, get off of, get from the pharmaceutical industry. And that's why they do placebo controlled tests, because they want to have something that actually is more effective than the placebo. And sometimes they have the opposite effect. They see, placebo is more effective than the drug.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I do want to just mention, because I know I think we're getting closer to the end, but I do want to mention about climate change,
Yeah.
because again, like I said, when the governor went to the United Nations and said that the reason why what happened in Maui was because of climate change, that's such a crock, you guys, and I'll show you why. And this
And
is,
Michelle, just so you know, if
yeah.
you want to go over, I'm perfectly happy to,
Oh, okay, good.
to
All
go a
right,
little bit
great.
longer. I'm not under any time scale. I want to respect yours. So if you've got a little time to go a little longer, we can.
I
And
do.
we
Okay,
got about
great. Wonderful.
2,500 people watching right now. So
Okay,
obviously
this
people
is
are
great.
interested in this subject.
It's as important. They need us to believe in climate danger, I should say. They
Hmm.
need us to believe in climate danger, because that is what will bring in all the smart cities and all of the electric vehicles. And let me just show you guys, there is a World Climate Declaration. If you put in your URL, World Climate Declaration, this will come up. You will see the signatures. There's 1,000 right now. There's 1,971 signatures the last time I checked. And these are signatures from, they have to be credentialed scientists. You actually have to show your credentials as a scientist in order to sign this declaration. And this is part of what it says. To believe the outcome of a climate model is to believe what the model makers have put in. This is precisely the problem of today's climate discussion, to which climate models are central. Climate science has degenerated into a discussion based on beliefs, not on sound critical science. Should not we free ourselves from the naive belief in immature climate models? You guys, they need us to believe in climate change to bring forth the smart cities. That's why they keep pushing it. There was a teacher in Europe that did not want to show his children an inconvenient truth, that was a documentary made by Al Gore. And in Inconvenient Truth, it's like all about global warming, and the ice caps are melting, and we're going to be underwater in 10 years and whatever. But he fought it, and he sued them. And a British judge ruled that this film had 9 different errors. And I have all the errors in the book. But this was published in the Seattle Times in 2007, but none of the media really talked about it. but that whole documentary is false. A lot of it is false, I should say. John Coleman was the first meteorologist on Good Morning America. He was the first weatherman on Good Morning America. He won Meteorologist of the Year in 1984. He founded the Weather Channel. This is the man who founded the Weather Channel. He says there's no significant global warming. He's been on CNN. He's been all over. He's been called a climate denier. Can you imagine the founder of the Weather Channel being called a climate denier? This is from the National Library of Medicine, August 4th, 2020, and it literally says a modern grand solar minimum will lead to terrestrial cooling. You guys, they have proof that the Earth is cooling, not warming. And here's another person, 50-year meteorologist and climatologist, Professor David Dilley, with the U.S. Air Force, and he's got a resume the size of my arm. This guy is so knowledgeable about the weather, and he talks about the Milankovitch cycle. The Milankovitch cycle is how the Earth goes around the sun. And 8,000 years ago, the Earth was closer to the sun. It's going down. It's actually going toward cooling. It's not going to be there in our lifetime, but it's cooling. So I just wanted to share that with you guys, as well as a little bit about the electric vehicles, because here on Big Island, we have a Big Island general plan where they want to have 0 emissions by 2030, which means all people having electric cars. And this is really scary because an electric car, when it has gas inside the engine, and I don't mean liquid, I mean gas. And if that engine gets a crack or a hole in it, it will start a fire. It could start a fire, and that fire will take over 2 hours to put out, over 2,500 to 25,000 gallons of water. And if it catches another electric vehicle on fire and it's on a boat, this is what has happened. 70 fires have been reported in the last 5 years on container ships. I live on an island. That's how we get our food, is through container ships. And if they don't tie down these electric vehicles enough, or if they hit bad weather and these electric cars start banging against each other, they'll more than likely catch on fire. And electric vehicles, this is somebody who rented one because her car was in the shop, and the electric vehicle caught fire and they couldn't put it out, and it literally destroyed her home. In the middle, you see these Amazon Prime vans. Look at that flamethrower going up to the sky. That is because there was a crack in the engine. And again, if there's a crack, that means there's gas. It's going to become a flamethrower. This is on the right-hand side. It's 100% electric bus, and that it became a flamethrower. So the other thing that I want to share around this is because they want to bring this to the islands, and you cannot put these batteries in a landfill. They're toxic. If the battery cracks, it will emit toxic fumes. You can't put these in a landfill. And we already have problems with our rubbish here on the island. China used to take our recycling. They don't take it now. So now the recycling just goes into the landfill. So we won't have any place to put these electric vehicles. And not only that, but our electric grid is we already get blackouts. So the electric grid goes down. It can't even hold our electric needs right now, and they want people to get electric vehicles. You guys, who prospers with the electric vehicle? The electric company. Who owns the electric company? BlackRock. Who owns them? It's like all connected. And the last thing I want to share is check out your general plan. Look at your general plan. This is the Big Island general plan that I've been fighting for the past 6 months. And this is one paragraph, and it says, maintain an ongoing program of identification, designation, and acquisition of areas. They want to acquire land. And then here's the last thing I'll share. This is our Big Island, what it looks like for they look at everything in teal is conservation. That means only a park can be on it. They want to take most of Big Island. Everything in green means natural land. That means no farming, no buildings, no park, nothing. What did I say about Saudi Arabia and the line? They want to keep nature for nature. That's what they want to do to Big Island. We've been fighting this. And then everything in yellowish brown is a buffer zone, which means smart city, which means 15-minute city. And that's what's coming for Big Island, or they're trying to get that to come to Big Island. And we have been fighting it the whole way. And I just want to say, if you guys watching this, these disasters are the poster children for the smart cities and the electric vehicles, but that they're just going to be the poster children. Look at your general plan and see what's coming in your area, and go to those meetings and stand up and speak out. If you want to know what to say, you can go to standtogetherhawaii.com. Standtogetherhawaii.com is a website I put together for the Hawaii Islands. You can click on action and you'll see a whole video. I have testimonies of what you guys can say when it comes to the electric vehicles, when it comes to clustered housing. They, like Big Island, we're rural. I'm on a farm, 11-acre farm, and they want to put clustered housing here on Big Island. This is not Oahu. This is nature. We are way out in nature. But you guys, look at your general plan, because that's where communism will be coming in. That's where these smart cities will be coming in. And that's where the Americans here and those not in America, you got to check your plan too. This is coming for all of us. Nobody is immune to this. And that's why I really feel it's a spiritual war, because when I just go, okay, Great Spirit, I trust you. What is mine to do next? What's my kuleana? What's mine to do next? Just show me what I'm supposed to do. And then I wait until I get an inspiration from my heart that tells me, okay, now do this. You guys, that's our kuleana. That's your responsibility. Like Nate, his kuleana has been to create this amazing podcast, and he's done a great job, and he keeps going every single week and feeling into what's next. And I don't know if you realize that that's what you're doing or not, but you're guided.
Mhm.
And that's when we when we create a relationship with that higher power, we realize it's a game. The fear starts to go away, and we trust. I've gone into stores without a mask on, and I was afraid, and I kept going, Great Spirit, I'm giving this to you. I'm going in. You're gonna show me what happens, and it always worked out. It always works out.
After years of working for the government, I have become very skeptical. Anytime I see the government and the media working hand in hand, I automatically go, something's not right here. And we've seen that in recent years with a lot of things, and climate change has been a big one. I want to real quick just go back and talk about that for a minute, because this is kind of interesting. So from 1900s to the 1940s, the consensus was that there was gradual global warming. Okay. You had a Swedish scientist, savant, Arrhenius, in 1896, that suggested that increased CO2 levels would lead to warming, the greenhouse effect. However, this idea was not widely accepted. Then in the mid 20th century, so from 1940s to 1970s, the dominant view was global cooling. And everybody was warning about global cooling, and it was all, the end of the world is coming, and we're going to go into a great ice age. And, everybody was talking about that. Scientists hypothesized that aerosols, a particulate pollution from post-war industrialization, were reflecting sunlight and counteracting warming from greenhouse gases. Now, this is interesting, because that same ideology is behind why people are spraying stuff into the skies today. Exactly. That has been a huge part of Bill Gates' push to spray things like silver oxide and aluminum oxide into the air. Then from the 1970s to the 1990s, it came back to global warming, and they were talking about that. And you had them coming up with theories about ocean measurements and atmospheric studies and so on and so forth. And theories were being advanced in climate models that said, the greenhouse gases like CO2, methane, nitrous oxide, were trapping heat and diving global temperatures upward. Problem is that when they started looking at the data, after all of this, this supposed research, they started seeing temperatures were getting colder. So it didn't really make sense. So then they realized that they were not going to win this war going back and forth. So they just decided, from the 2000s on, they said, we're just going to call it climate change. That way we can blame everything on it. Weather, anomalies, even though we don't know what the effects are of all of this climate manipulation that they've been doing. I would say that's more likely to cause, extreme events than nature. But here's something just to kind of throw out there for people that, that maybe run into people still that they have to, defend, or that they have to talk about this to. Something to think about is this: when is it warmest in the year? And maybe, for those in Hawaii, even you will see it there, because I remember when I was living in Hawaii. But obviously somebody living like where I live in West Virginia, the difference between summer and winter is dramatically different. We've got snow on the ground. It's basically below freezing temperatures here. But in the summertime, it is so hot and humid that I can't stand to be outside for very long unless I'm, taking a dip in the river. And what is the difference between those? Our position relative to the sun. That's really what it boils down to. The sun is the biggest indicator of what is going to, that is the number one thing that affects temperature, not man-made, CO2 or any. Remember, CO2 is what plants need in order to breathe.
I know.
And they produce oxygen for us. I mean, this is common
I wish people
sense,
would take
basic
Science 101. Science 101
Yeah.
would show that.
Yeah. And so if we cut all the CO2, then what are plants going to live off of? And if the plants start dying because we've cut CO2, then they're not going to be producing oxygen. I mean, this is a disaster to, we live in something called an ecosystem. And the fact is that for them to try to make the claim that man-made, and I'm a 100% believer in climate change. It's called the 4 seasons and the solar cycles. It's cyclical. The fact is that during times of heavy sunspot activity, you have a lot more of coronal mass ejection and all kinds of things that are going on that affect weather differently. There's a lot going on. But the other thing that just I don't ever hear anybody talk about is that we actually have something, within the time that we've been studying weather, that we can, or at least within the time that man has been recording. Let's put it that way. That within the time that man has been recording things and documenting things, we had something called the mini ice age, and it was not caused by industrialization because there was no industrialization at the time. What it was caused by was a volcanic eruption, and the fact is that volcanoes will dump way more, carbon into the air than we could in a lifetime. And it'll dump, that kind of stuff into the air within a short period of time. It's unbelievable.
Gosh. Sorry.
That's all right. So these things are obvious to anybody that has eyes to see. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. Like I said, you go out in the summer, it's hotter. You go out in the winter, it's colder. What is the thing that made the temperature change? It's not the amount of CO2 that we're putting into the air. There's no differences in CO2 between those time periods. No, it's the sun. And so when they're spraying crap into the sky that likely is causing cancer and causing all other kinds of problems, destroying the environment, God knows what it's doing. We really don't know. But they're experimenting with the air that we breathe. They're experimenting with the air that we breathe without our permission. And at the same time, they're reflecting the sun's warmth, the very thing that gives us life. Without the sun, we die. They want to reflect it back into space. It's absolute lunacy. And we've got to speak out, to fight against it. I really do believe that. So I want to thank you for bringing that up.
The other thing is 1% of human interaction is what humans do is 1% of how it changes the climate. And the other thing is ocean, the plate tectonics in the ocean are what caused the ocean to rise. It's not because of the temperature. It's actually because of the plate tectonics in the ocean floor.
That's a good point.
Cause the rise and fall of the sea levels. And
I'll tell you,
close to this is the ocean right now, and I can tell you there's no town in the Hawaii Islands is close to being underwater right now.
And I'll tell you something else too. You know, I lived in Japan for 3 years. I was there during the Great Tsunami, and that, you know, massive amount, 30 feet of water that encroached, you know, up to 15 miles inland, was not caused by anything, you know, man-made. This was
That's
plate
right.
tectonics that, you know, rose the seabed. In
That's
fact,
right.
the shoreline dropped. I want to say it was like something, I can't remember the exact number of feet, so I won't say, but it dropped enough that the 30-foot seawall that they had built, you know, did nothing to stop the wave that came in. So there's a lot of factors that are at play, a lot of things that are going on, and to try to when anybody's trying to push a narrative, you know, that is saying that there's one cause of this whole thing, and, oh, you better be scared, and you ever be, you know, be afraid. Oh, and we should create this system of cap and trade, you know, so that we can, you know, all make money betting on, you know, this whole thing. That right there should tell you something's wrong when governments are involved, you know, trying to, you know, manipulate things. I mean, I look at, like, I think it was George Carlin, you know, that said, you know, that we're like a flea, you know, on the back of, you know, the earth, and it, you know, it could shake us
That's right.
off, and, you know, we're not going to do a whole lot to it. And that's, I do believe that is the case. You know, the truth is, we have a symbiotic relationship with the earth. You mentioned it
Yes, we
earlier
do.
about
We absolutely
frequencies.
do.
It's
So
interesting that you mentioned that.
I'll blow your listeners' minds. We're actually the cells of the earth. We're actually the consciousness of the earth. The body, it comes from the planet, and we're going to return to the planet. So we're connected to it all, and people actually, like, the roots of the plant of the trees, they actually communicate with each other. I
Hmm.
live on an organic farm, and we can actually, when we have a high frequency, we can actually feel and communicate with nature. It's like they've done studies where you talk to a plant and it grows better.
I do
That's
that.
that's yeah.
You know, I learned that actually watching my grandmother when I was a kid. My grandmother, she was part Native American. Her mother was a medicine woman, and in Pennsylvania, and so I watched her talking to the trees, and, you know, that she had planted in her yard, and talking to the rose bushes and all of that. And I do that to this day. And, you know, it's kind of funny. And sometimes I think, you know, if somebody saw me, they'd think I'm nuts. But there are actual scientific studies that have been done, and one of the most famous, because they actually did a repeat of this, was they had this was done at Berkeley University. Of course, you know, they're going to do it there, right? But they hooked up a machine. They hooked up a lie detector machine to a plant, and I can't remember the name of the study, but they thought, you know, bad thoughts towards the plant, like, you know, burning it down, you know, with a blowtorch or something like that. And the plant started to give off a reaction on the, you know, on the lie detector. And so there was a group of kids, like, 30 years later, that decided, you know, they thought that was a bunch of BS, and they decided to prove it wrong. And so they you know, did the experiment. And I think the only difference is they used a tomato plant instead of whatever, you know, maybe the ficus bush or whatever was used before. But they redid it, and it had the exact same effect. They were able to repeat it. And there have been other studies. Another one that was pretty interesting was, they were curious about how a seedling is able to grow in a dark forest, you know, and rise up, you know, through it, because there's no sunlight. So how is it getting its nutrition? It doesn't have the ability, you know, to photosynthesize, you know, sugar. And so they theorized that the plants were receiving, you know, nutrition through the mycelium, which is basically a fungal network that's under the
That's
ground
right.
that these plants, you know, use to communicate. But they theorized that a tree was able to identify its own offspring, and that it was the one sending nutrients. So they did this really interesting experiment where they took this, you know, evergreen tree. They put radium inside of a plastic bag and tied it off to one of the branches of the parent tree. And that way they could track, because it's radioactive, they could track the radiation through the soil and see if that was going to that tree that was genetically matched to that, you know, to the parent tree. And sure enough, it was. So plants are able to identify their offspring. In fact,
Yeah.
another experiment was done with seagrass. They took two seagrass families that were, you know, they were the same species, but they were from two different genetic, you know, lineages. And they put them in a container, And what they found was one seagrass would put something into the soil that would, make the soil toxic for the other. They were fighting each other for
Mm.
land. They were trying to fight each other to basically, provide for their own progeny. And it just was fascinating to me. And so, like, when we talk about, when this, leads me to think that, when PETA, says, oh, we shouldn't be eating animals, I'm thinking, well, do you hold the same logic when it comes to eating plants? How about we just respect what we eat, and we do it in a sustainable and respectful way, whether
And
it's animals or plants.
your body tells you what it needs.
That's
And
right.
you'll know if you are desiring something, then there's something in that food, dairy or nutrients or vitamins and minerals that your body's needing. And so, yeah, so that's the other thing too, is that people don't understand their health. They don't, I'm just going to just say that masks help against a virus like a chain link fence helps against a mosquito. I've been studying fitness for 30
That's great.
years. Hand sanitizers literally poison for your microbiome, for your gut.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Use soap and water. That's all you need. Your body has more bacteria on and inside than it does cells. You need your bacteria. You don't want to kill your bacteria because it helps you stay healthy. So, they've been telling us so many lies.
My
So,
my
yeah.
uh, my brother he's an electrician. He's a foreman. Um, and in the union, he's always been the one that has taken the course on, masks and stuff, because they work in some, dangerous environments, and they have to make sure that they're wearing masks. And so he's had all the training on this. And when they first came out with the mask mandates, he was just livid, because he said, these masks, they're talking, these paper masks aren't doing anything. He says,
It's really bad.
and he was talking about how the like in his industry, they have to wear monitors that monitor for how much carbon dioxide that they're rebreathing in, right? And so specifically the masks are designed to let carbon dioxide out, because and then filter the air coming in, because there's a toxic level of carbon dioxide, and these paper masks absolutely, were showing that. The other thing, though, that
Yeah.
he said, and this was like kind of like common sense, you don't have to be a smart person to figure this out. And he, it's kind of crude, but as a construction worker, right? He's going to use this kind of language, but it makes sense. He says, if I can smell your fart through this mask, it ain't doing nothing to stop a
It's not
virus.
working. And then your teeth.
That's the
Your
truth.
teeth is like dentists. We're seeing people who wear their mask all the time. We're having way more teeth issues, because
Sure.
you're actually, when you exhale, that's releasing toxins. Your body, that's part of releasing toxins. Sweat and breath and elimination are how your body releases toxins. So it's interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Wow. This has been just a fascinating conversation, and I'm really glad to have had you on. I think that we have to talk about these things. We can't be afraid of cancel culture. We can't be afraid of talking about these things. And I think it's important that when we do, we have to approach it humbly. We have to recognize that we may not have all the facts. We may not know everything that there is to know about a topic. Like I said, one of the things that I do get concerned about is the fact that I realize and I understand that we have to keep up with technology so we can keep our competitive edge against our enemies. But at the same time, what kind of accountability is there when everything is, kept secret, from the public, when we don't know what's going on? What is it that they are hiding from us and keeping, and why? I do think that there needs to be more transparency. That's one thing that I believe in firmly. And I think that that while we may need to research things, we may need to have, technology, kind of the carry a big stick, speak softly and carry a big stick approach. And I do understand that. I also feel like, why aren't we talking more publicly about this? Why aren't countries like the United States and maybe some of our adversaries like China saying, hey, we've saw fit to realize that nuclear weapons were something that could destroy the whole world over. So we decided to create treaties and create nuclear arms treaties that say, hey, we're not going to do this, without this. And, if, in other words, we're not going to fire, a nuclear weapon unless you fire upon us. We're going to reduce the number of nuclear weapons, and we don't need that many. We've come to certain agreements because we saw the danger in this. And I don't see that same level of caution with some of these other technologies and weapons. And I think we need that. I think there need to be discussions, bilateral agreements with nations that says, hey, we will not commit a cyber attack against your critical infrastructure. And if you do it to us, we will see it as an act of war. But there needs to be rules of engagement. We won't do weather experiments, or directed energy weapons on your country. You don't do it to us. There needs to be these types of talks and discussions, because the fact is we are going to develop it. And some of the applications maybe could be used for good. Like the one thing that I saw that was kind of interesting was the idea of directing energy from the sun down to a plant that can harvest that, electricity, right? Generate electricity from it. I got no problem with that. But if it ain't being, talked about, in some sort of public fashion, if it's not being, discussed and audited by regular citizens, then how do we know that they're not cutting corners and doing things that could cause massive damage, to our planet? We do want to make sure that technology, as it advances, that it's being done safely and with consensus and agreement of the people like you and me that are likely going to be affected by it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really hope that people realize also that the agenda that's coming down from the United Nations, that's not it's looking good, like flowery language, but it's not what we want. It's really more about rules, regulations, and control. Like they're talking about, no more poverty. Yes, everybody wants, all the children of the world, everybody to have food, but what does that look like? Does that look like taking away the sustainability of our organic farmers and limiting the number, how much food you get to eat? Like that's what those things really mean. So it's like, it's really important. But I
Eat
just want to say, Nate,
bugs.
thank you so much for
will,
having me. Exactly. Thank you for
you will
having
own
me.
nothing and be happy.
Yeah. And
These
people
people
can
are
get my
crazy.
book at greatmauilandgrabbook.com. It won the 3rd finalist in the American Book Fest under True Crime. It was the one competition I wanted to place in, and I'll find out about the other contests in March. But you can get it at greatmauilandgrabbook.com. It definitely has Who Owns America. It talks about the woman who was the first climate change spokesperson, and it also says what we can do, which is how to bring back the Constitution, how to stand for the Constitution, and actually also how to hold our legislative body people accountable through notices of liability. So
Amen.
I just want to say thank you so much for all you do and for having me on today.
Thank you. I want to show one comment here because I think this was really a great comment as we were talking about, kind of what these people are talking about in regards to climate change, how ridiculous some of it is. And I thought this was a great comment here. The elites don't seem concerned about climate change when they're flying their private jets around. They're owning 2 to 3 or more homes, and they keep building them, along the coasts and the oceans and seasides. So it's such a true statement, and it speaks volumes as to the genuineness of their supposed concerns, right? If they were really that concerned, then why are they flying, their private jets around and, so they can lecture us on, how much, climate footprint we're creating with our little, Volkswagen car or whatever. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, they don't want us to have gas tractors. I mean, I'm like,
That's
how,
right.
like electric tractor or gas tractor, there's no competition there. And I would like to see an electric vehicle pull a boat out of the water.
Yeah.
Like that is just.
Yeah. And the fact is that nobody talks about how much carbon footprint is created in actually digging these rare earth minerals out of the ground and, processing and create and electric cars. Where do you think they're getting their electricity from?
Exactly. And the harm it's causing these people that are literally being poisoned to death by mining cobalt.
That's right.
It's, so
it's very
that's
disingenuous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Extremely.
I got to run one more commercial. And then when we get back, I want to have you share one more time where people can get your book, and then we'll kind of wrap things up. All right.
Okay.
So we're going to run this last commercial, and then we'll be right back.
Increasing expenses have caused us all a lot of pressure these days, and it's affecting even the wealthiest of people. Most have lost their sense of security, stability, and even hope for a strong financial future. the game plan of everyone in your cell phone has likely been disrupted or even hardcore stopped. And most are looking for a creative solution to regain financial momentum. Oftentimes, life's best solutions are the simplest. But first, a question. What is something most people think they should own but don't? Crypto? Fine art? Real estate? Nope. We are talking about real money. The kind kings and queens fought for and large institutions today buy in mass. We're talking about gold and silver, assets that provide confidence in tough financial situations. So the question is, do you own any? If you don't, you're not alone. Most people aren't maximizing the power of precious metals because it's just been too complicated. And even though they see advertisements about gold and silver daily, they don't really know who to trust. That is, until now. The bottom line is that buying gold and silver doesn't have to be complicated or scary. There's a simple, better way to accumulate assets and create financial peace, headache-free. And this very minute, a new community of average people are seeing above average results to the tune of tens of millions in assets over the last few years. This system is tested, it's simple, and it's not an experiment. To date, it's helped more than 80,000 people bring hope back into their lives. It's invitation only. And right now, this new community has accepted a challenge to give away as much free gold this year as possible. Curious? Learn how to get your free gold today. Check out the next step to get the details.
Welcome back to the Raising Cain Show. And we've been talking about a lot of subjects, and really it all focuses down to not allowing the power brokers to fear us into believing, what they're pushing. And so, Michelle, I want to thank you again for coming on the show and sharing with us all the things that you've been sharing. It's really amazing. You've done, quite a masterpiece of work in your book in breaking down a lot of the details. It's funny because, it's a subject that I've read a lot about, but you've really gone to breaking down the details and digging up a lot of the documents and the patents and things like that. Tell people again where they can find your book.
Mahalo. You can get the book at greatmauilandgrabbook.com, Great Maui Land Grab Book. It's the second edition. It has 27 fire anomalies from the Maui Fire, 9 questionable weather events. It also has the questionable weather events that happened in North Carolina, and comparing North Carolina with Maui. It also has the Who Owns America, the climate change, smart cities, and carbon revealed, as well as what we can do right now. And that's part of that is going to your general plan and looking at your general plan. But if you have anybody who's going, well, I don't know what's going on, I don't believe the conspiracy theorist people, but I know something's happening, get them this book, greatmauilandgrabbook.com, because everybody loves Maui. Everybody loves sees this wrong. And when we start the anomalies, I barely touched on them. It's quite astronomical of the atrocities that went on there and are still going on right now. So I just want to say mahalo for anybody who does support me and support the book. You can get 10% off by putting truth in the coupon code. So put truth in the coupon code. And mahalo,
Awesome.
Nate, for having me on.
And Michelle, where can people follow you? Are you on social media?
Yeah, my Blossom Inner Wellness is on YouTube and Rumble and all of the Twitter and Instagram. But Blossom Inner Wellness, Inner INNER and Wellness. I've been a fitness trainer for 30 years, like I said, and this is when the COVID happened, that started my journey toward becoming an activist. And then when the fire happened, I was just full blown. People have to see the truth. And I've had my own awakening journey for about 8 years. And this book literally was, what did I say earlier about divine guidance? I was up till midnight. I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I knew what chapters were next. And I would find these sources. It has over 200 sources in the book of so it's just like that's when we start to create a relationship with our higher power, we're guided and we're taken care of. And that's the last thing I want to share too. Don't be afraid. You know, it's like, take the hit. If you're afraid, take the hit, breathe through it, but then trust this is a game. This is a game. We're not here for very long, you guys. We didn't come from this earth as far as our energy and our soul. The body will stay here because it belongs to the planet, but not our energy and our frequency. We get to go back to the infinite source of love, which created all of us, is beating your heart, is breathing your body. And it's not a mistake that you're here at this time in history. You chose this, and remember that, and you got this. You totally got this.
You know, I'm glad that you bring the spiritual into it, because the reality is that, look, we have our part to play. We need to be engaged. We need to be talking to, you know, our legislators. We need to, you know, be respectful and in our own way, you know, doing things that are sustainable, that are healthy, you know, exercising, eating the right foods, all of that. But if we only do those things and we don't pay attention to the spiritual part of our lives, we are missing a whole aspect of who we are. And if we think that we can make the change and that we can do that without God's help, then it's a very arrogant way to live. And that's one of the reasons I always end my show in prayer. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that and close this out in prayer. And then we'll wrap it up. Heavenly Father, Lord, I just thank you so much for this guest, for Michelle, Lord, and the work that she's done. I pray your blessing be upon her and upon her household. Lord, I thank you for everybody who is watching the show. We've got almost 3,000 people live watching. Lord, I thank you for all of them. I pray that you would bless them as well. And everybody who's going through difficult times, Lord, that you would give them what they need, that you would sustain them. Lord, I pray for our nation. I pray for our world. Lord, I pray that you would raise up righteous leadership, Lord, and that you would remove the corrupt and the evil. Lord, it feels like there is a change coming on, Lord, like something is changing, and that you know, Satan and the evil one is you know, fighting tooth and nail in these last few weeks. And I pray, God, that you would bring us through this and sustain us through this time, and that you would bring about a revolution not only in our hearts and our minds, but in our souls. Lord, we ask all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. So it is wonderful.
Michelle, thank you so much for coming on the show. And if you don't mind hanging on right after we end the show, I'd love to just, exchange contact information and everything as well.
Absolutely.
Folks, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been a wonderful time. I got a great group of people that have had some wonderful comments in the comment section. And, remember, stay hungry and stay humble. Have a wonderful night. God bless, and God bless this nation, and God bless you and your family.
Aloha, everyone.
Raise some Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change, time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.